Everybody, how's it going? Happy Tuesday. How's everybody doing out there in Facebook, YouTube land? I don't know if we're streaming on any other platforms. This is my good friend and partner in crime, coach in our program, our Maxima Potentia coaching program, Ryan Ridgely. How's it going, bro?
Good, man. How's it going?
Good.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. This is the first time we've done one together, right?
Yeah, first time.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited to chop it up. We don't have anybody on here now, but when people start coming on, I would love for everybody to drop a comment, or even if you're watching the replay, actually, do me a favor. Drop a thumbs up or a heart, depending on where you're watching. Leave a comment, and if you would, share this, because we're going to get into some really important stuff. We're going to go over a lot of information. We're going to be covering the debate that Aubrey and myself did with Andrew of the Christian podcast last week. Many of you guys have seen this guy on the Whatever podcast. And, definitely the biggest debate I've ever been in. I haven't been in many debates. I've been in lots of arguments. But he was skilled. But we're going to expose a lot of his false equivalencies and logical fallacies today. And hopefully you guys debate. We are going to actually accept callers for this. So for those that will be watching live, if you have something to contribute to the conversation, I'll just drop a comment. Let us know that you want to call in, and we'll provide a link where you can join us, and you can, if there's a certain part that you want to talk about. So, yes, do me a favor, whether you're watching live or you're watching the replay, leave a comment. Let us know that you were here. It does help with the algorithm so more people see this. How's it going, Aubrey?
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm very excited to be here. To all the listeners listening in, welcome to spending time with us, and we're just looking forward into taking this debate apart, see where we went wrong, and how we can improve.
Yes. So before we jump in, what was your overall assessment of the debate? I know what I think. I'd love to hear just what do you guys think? Just short assessment. Do you think it was a good thing, a bad thing? Are you glad people are talking about it finally? What do you think?
I think personally, if we look at it, I'm going to break it down into certain sections. I think academically, it was a terrible debate. If we look at the real academics of debating, it was really one of those street debates, no holds bar, and so very not quite the reflection of what a true debate would look like. And I mean, I debate for a living in court, but at the same time, I think when it comes to the overall topic, I think we're seeing a change. I think for the first time in human existence, we see that this polygyny argument or topic is really getting some traction, and people are starting to talk about it. I think one of the key comments that struck me during the debate, because I was looking through the comments while debating, and one of it is one of the guys said, "Man, I need to have a discussion with my pastor, because it seems to me he's either lied to me or he's ignorant himself." And so once again, this is one thing. If you look at what happened that day with Andrew Wilson, very skilled debater. And we didn't really get into the topic within the biblical part, and I'm going to segue right into this, the biblical section to this. And is polygyny sin according to the Bible? And that, after the debate, some people don't really know the answer, and that's why we do this topic, to say, listen here, let's have a reevaluation and see where this topic really falls within the greater spectrum of the marketplace.
Great perspective, Aubrey. I just want to add before I ask you, Ryan, is I'll be honest, I didn't really want to debate Andrew. I knew he was an animal. He was going to try to embarrass me, and he's a skilled debater. He does this all the time. I knew I had the truth on my side, so Aubrey and I talked about it. It's like, okay, if I don't do it, then the conversation doesn't happen on his channel. If I do it, even if I lose, there's this percentage, in people's eyes, I lose. In people's eyes, a certain percentage of the people will hear something that they'll go, yeah, that, you know what? How is that possible? And maybe it'll rattle around in their head for a couple weeks before they finally have to search it out for themselves. And I just feel like the truth is there if you look. I just never looked. So for those of you that don't know, my goal when I started creating content was just to do for other people what no one did for me. For 23 years, I believed in monogamy only. I kept pushing girls away. I mean, I was abstinent, and for most of those years, very lonely, very depressed. Many girls wanting to get close to me, but I was waiting for something. I didn't even know what, but like a unicorn girl that checked all the boxes, and come to find out that the one isn't even a biblical concept. It's not. You don't see that anywhere in Scripture. Very much. A lot of times they just made pragmatic decisions. Your brother's wife dies, you marry her. I mean, your brother dies, you marry the wife. You marry the widow and give her a baby. Things like that. So, my only goal with all this is I just want to get people to hear about it so that they can research it for themselves. Because if I had heard one person mention it in my 23 years, I certainly would have looked, because I knew that I was wired more for polygyny than I was for monogamy, but I never heard anybody talk about it. The only reason I even found it was I just, on a whim, I watched some Netflix special on cults, and it got me thinking about polygyny because they talked about, plural marriage in it. I was like, are there any Christians that believe this? And I just happened to Google it. If I didn't, I'd still be single, probably. Now, because to be honest, me and my wife, that's how we started talking, actually. She responded to a post I made about polygyny. So that's another story. But Ryan, so I personally, I guess I'll just conclude to say, I think it was good. I think it was a home run for us because people are talking about it and it's on people's radar. But I will agree with Aubrey that, there are definitely parts I'm like, man, he's a smart guy. His vocabulary is great. And I knew what I was walking into. So what do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, no, I think it was great. It was great to get the topic out there. I think it's a great opportunity for us to get more exposure overall. Biblical patriarchy overall needs to be heard. The church is making a mess of it. In my perspective is that it's more of a matriarchy than a patriarchy in the churches today. Now, I know we're going to get into it here, but as much as Andrew likes to say, let's not appeal to emotion, he sets the stage appealing to emotion, talking about marrying first cousins. He's setting the tone for the audience. He turns them towards him right off the bat. Yep. And so people are just turned off mentally right into what he's trying to say. Yep. And the other thing was that the debate topic was a slam dunk for him. He's very contextual. He has a strong historical standpoints, and he's just very educated historically. He did his homework. He had the arguments ready, and he basically just cornered us, and the result was that he was able to argue. But if you pay attention to his argument, the title was to save marriage in the West, but his argument was save the West. You got to pay close attention. Right. We weren't arguing save the West. We were arguing to save marriage in the West. And I still think there's a strong chance that there's an argument there. But better topics in the future might do a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I don't. They did kind of stack the deck, and the moderator was very much in his favor. He was letting him do whatever he wanted. He was bulldozing us and interrupting and changing things, not answering questions that we asked him. So here's how this is going to work today. We're going to watch this together. We're going to play Andrew's opening statement, and then we're going to pause it. We're going to talk about it. Now, look, we are accepting callers. Okay, at some point we're going to open this up. So if you have something to say, maybe it's something that even happened after the opening statement, and that you want to comment on, maybe you want to add some perspective. What we're going to do is actually, here's what you'll do. Email me, Rob at Rob B. Kowalski. So it's Rob, R-O-B at, actually, let me put it in the chat. robbkowalski.com if you know how to spell that. And I will send you the link to join us, and you can come on screen with us. Before we get into it, I want to do two things. One, I want everybody to hit that thumbs up or heart, depending on where you're watching, and drop a comment. Even if you just say, hey, that will trip the algorithm and make sure more people see this. We've been able to get, we were on Pearl's channel. I don't know if you know Just Pearly Things, 2 million subscribers talking about Christian polygamy, because we are making a stir and we need y'all's help. So hit that thumbs up button, drop a comment, let us know where you're watching from. I'd really love to know where everybody's from. And then if you are pro polygyny or anti, so your town, your city, and then pro or no. Okay. And then lastly, before we get in, before we actually bring Andrew's video or the debate video up, I just want to mention that for those of you who don't know, Aubrey, Ryan, and myself, we have a coaching program. And the reason, so Aubrey leads these group coaching calls every Thursday. Ryan does the one-on-one calls. I usually create the content, do the marketing. But we're not only passionate about helping people know the truth about biblical marriage, we want to help them do it right. Aubrey's been married for collectively to his 2 wives, for 2 women, should I say. Gotta be careful these days. For over, 23 years, I think?
That's
Yes.
correct. Next year will be 20 years with Regine and 5 with Jolene.
And his women are beautiful, and one's a doctor and the other's in education, and very smart, beautiful ladies. And he's a stud. He's a black belt jiu-jitsu, master's degree in law. I mean, we're learning from the best. We bring in different people that can help us. We were learning about how to set up a trust a week or 2 ago and divide your finances properly amongst your family. But it's really about leveling up as men and being the kind of man that a woman would be willing to share. Okay. And then we also have a portion for the ladies that there a lot of times the wives of the men that are seeking polygyny or are already in it are looking for support. They have questions. They have things they're working through, and the ladies do that together. But then we also have ladies that are just kind of kicking the tires on this. They're asking questions. They're trying to learn the difference between it all. And some of them are like, I never even considered this as an option. So I say all that to say we would love, we're opening it up. We have room for new people, for new members. But it starts out with an application. So you fill out an application, and then we'll schedule a one-on-one call with you. And if you're right for the program, then we'll invite you in. It's not free, but it's not expensive for the men. At least it's not free, but it's not expensive for the ladies. It actually is. We're not charging right now. We're actually letting the ladies come in and join us for free for at least the first 90 days, and then it may continue to stay free after that. So let me just drop this here. Where's the cap? Here we go. Hold on a second. They changed this around. Okay, there's the chat. Now I see it. Okay, there's the link to the application. Go ahead and fill that out, and then we will schedule a call. Ryan and I will schedule a call with you. Our next call is on Thursday night for men at 8 o'clock. What are we talking about, Aubrey? You know?
Thursday, I believe I think we're going into our first week of building kingdom builders.
Awesome. Yeah, it's basically thinking of yourself as a king, and you're building a kingdom, and you do a better job of describing it. So I'll let you take it on Thursday. All right, let's. Looks like we got people from Queensland, Australia. Caleb Rockstead, thank you for that comment. Survivor, I see you all the time in the comments. I appreciate you on YouTube. Okay, let's see if we got any other place. All right, let's just get started. All right, I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to start off with the opening statement.
Thank you.
All right, Andrew.
Can y'all hear that okay?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay,
start with your opening statement?
Yeah, this argument is blown out in 2 seconds. The easiest way to do it is just to point out that under this framework that he just outlined, you could marry your first cousin. So, and I doubt that he would advocate that. There's nothing biblically that would say that you couldn't. There's nothing biblically that says, I mean, it happened, in fact, right? But you wouldn't advocate for that. And anyway, the debate's not about that anyway. I'd like to take a second to point out that the debate isn't over if polygyny is against Christian ethics or not, though I'm sure at some point we'll touch on that. For the sake of the argument of the debate of can it save the West is what I'm arguing against. The answer is clearly and most certainly no. Let us start with a demonstration. Pull up my screen, please. You'll see that I have a share screen ready. Oh, look at that. Ooh, that's a polygamy map. Pull that back up, please. So here on our nice polygamy map, these are the countries where polygamy is allowed, and some 99% of it is polygynist. It's polygynist. I would like you to note that the red, where it's illegal, are the host countries with the most immigrants from the countries in green, where it's legal. The United Nations actually cites polygamy as a primary cause for the instability for various reasons, which we can get into, and the UN itself doesn't even recommend polygyny as a cultural attitude to be outsourced, which is amazing because they basically do it for almost every other attitude. There are multitudes of anthropological studies backing up this point, so many, in fact, it was actually overwhelming. Let's go over some of the quick bullet points. Polygamy Polygyny destabilizes societies. According to these anthropological studies, here's how they do it. Less civil liberties, highest rates of despotism, higher rates of warfare, higher rates of intergroup violence, more government corruption, and less political security, national security. These associations remain across all countries with polygyny, regardless of religion, culture, or ethnicity, meaning that just because you're a Christian polygynist, it doesn't seem to help this whatsoever. This is because it creates a standing pool of aggrieved young men with no prospects whatsoever for reproductive access. These are usually poor young men. About half the boys in polygamous cultures need to be ejected from their community once they reach puberty to sustain this imbalance, and these are called lost boys. Major problem with political instability in these countries. If most families can't get by the way, on one income with only one wife and 1.6 kids, how many men can afford multiple wives and many children? Well, the answer is almost none. Children from polygamous families report higher rates of aggression, behavioral problems, likely to be less competitive, confusion with parental roles. Wives end up with more mental health problems from unequal treatment, favoritism, unhealthy competition, lack of trust, lack of marital satisfaction. Also, can I just point out that all these countries have the lowest GDP on planet Earth? Sub-Saharan Africa, Afghanistan, Polynesia, Papua New Guinea. I can tell you about a little island off the coast of that if you'd like. And Southeast Asia. Lowest GDP there is. Highest polygyny rates. It's called the Polygamy Belt, West and Central Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia. In Kenya, for instance, highly Christian, by the way, 43% of households with polyamorous men are poor compared to 27% of the monogamous household, much richer. Well-established link between polygamy, poverty, warfare, underdeveloped nations, and warlords. Overwhelming. It's not even close. There's no way you could ever make a case that polygyny or polygamy is going to save the West. It can't save the countries that it's in right this second. But to address Mr. Kowalski's arguments for polygamy, they are surface level and they're totally ridiculous. They don't actually even make sense. He argues there aren't enough virtuous women to go around, while also arguing Protestant churches have more women than men in them, which is true. There are many easily pointed out issues here. One, if more women than men are in Protestant churches, yet there are less virtuous women than men, it would entail that Protestant churches aren't producing virtuous women. But secular ethics is producing virtuous men. That is really fucking stupid, by the way. That is really stupid. Two, if it were the case, as he argues, polygamy is real and virtuous women are polygamous, and that's fine, as that's how they were designed, rather than a passion to overcome, then all it would mean is that the already small pool of virtuous women would marry the same virtuous man, creating an even smaller pool of virtuous women for men. Three, he argues that the skanks of society would basically be taken care of through polygamy, in this case polygyny, because of course men wouldn't mind marrying them if they already had a virtuous woman. This also makes no sense if you think about it for 1 second, because if you had a virtuous woman, why the hell would you want to marry a skank to begin with? Makes no sense. I assume because she gives better head. I don't really understand why else you'd want to do it. I don't even understand the argument. It's silly on its face. It just seems like it's a movement towards the pleasure of the flesh. It also has another problem as well, which is that it would basically be promoting promiscuity if it did work by adding an additional societal safeguard to promiscuous women, essentially assuring them a husband as long as she acted as a fuck puppet for him, which isn't very different from how secular women already act outside of Christian ethics. In fact, there's so many problems with the arguments that he made that I can barely scratch the surface, but I think that this is good for right now, and we can just move right into the debate. I just want to let both of you guys know right now.
All right, let's get into it. I have some notes here just in front of me. The first thing I wanted to talk about, I want to kind of go in chronological orders. What I thought is, let's go over the things that he said first. Okay. So the first thing that I came up with, and it was the part about marrying your first cousin, right? So I don't know if that's is that a false equivalency or the logical fallacy? I always get the two confused. But the difference is we don't see people marrying their first cousin over and over in the Bible, nor do we see God regulating how to go about marrying your relatives, right? He's comparing things, apples and oranges. Nor do we see in the world all these single women that if only their first cousin would marry them could solve this huge problem. Because I don't see any problem that gets solved with incest, but I do see a big problem that gets solved if you let godly men marry more than one, because many of them are already married. So I don't think that that's a good analogy.
Well, what we see here is the attempting to call upon the emotion of being married to your first cousin. One thing that's very important is that monogamy does not exclude you from marrying your first cousin. So just by virtue of that, I mean, we don't have a debate. You have no argument, because what Andrew's doing here is saying, listen here, polygyny is it's for somehow forcefully or you have a higher degree of somebody marrying their first cousin. And as I just said, monogamy doesn't actually exclude it. There's nothing that excludes you from marrying your first cousins and monogamy, and in the Bible, certainly not. Obviously, as you just mentioned rightfully, you don't want to have this recurring because it can have an impact in genetics and the development thereof. But ultimately, once again, it's a call to the emotion.
That's a good point, Aubrey. Ryan, did you have anything on that?
No, that's just just basically rehashing what I would have said. The appeal to emotion. He sets the stage on an emotional level, which gears the audience's mindset to that emotional response.
Yeah.
So therefore, everything they think about after that is going to be emotional, and you'll find in the if you continue to watch the debate, he makes accusations to others for appealing to emotion, but never holds himself to the same accountability.
Well, he said, if you remember, he says it destabilizes society. And then I brought up Israel. Well, that's a later, maybe we'll watch that. But he says it destabilizes society. I'm like, it didn't destabilize Israel. You remember that part? I could actually play it if you want. But he says, well, I said, they went from one man to over 500 people, or in 500 years, they went from one man to overthrowing the greatest, strongest country in the world, Egypt. And he said, well, America overthrew England. And I'm like, but hold on, you're comparing, again, bad analogy. People came from all over the world to America. Israel came from one guy. It was one family. So he multiplied. They had many wives. Israel had many wives, and that was how they were able to breed so fast. And but he says, well, America did that. Yeah, but they came from countries around the world, not from one guy. And also, if England was polygynous, they probably wouldn't have overthrown them because they would have had a lot more people than them. So another bad analogy.
So we will, let me just start off and say, because one of the questions that was asked here in the chat was who came up with the topic, and this is one thing that we were given the topic and we had to debate this. I had 6 hours to prepare for this debate, and I knew from the onset of this debate the question is flawed. Polygyny cannot save the Western world's marriages. Monogamy can't even save it. It's not even any other form within Christianity except absolute patriarchy. We would see this, and this is why in the opening statement, my intent was really to pivot that away from the topic that was or the question that was raised towards something to say, listen here, polygyny is an incidental part of biblical patriarchy, and in some cases it is expected. If you look at Deuteronomy 21, inheritance law, and 25, but ultimately what you want to see happening here is that polygyny actually gives a lot more substance and a lot more authority and credence to celibacy as well as monogamy, simply because if you want to have patriarchy, it cannot be limited by anybody other than by the men. And we'll see down the line when Andrew debated me on this fact, is that we see that is there anything else on this one? Sorry, there's a strange voice coming through here. Anyways, that being said, that we see that it really gives definition to the term that is patriarchy. But yes, Rob, you're absolutely right. We see that there's a comparison here. People forget that most of the Byzantium Empire was built by some polygynists. If you think about it, a nice little trivia here for everybody is that King Charlemagne, the emperor of the Holy Empire or Roman Empire, he was married to four of his 5 wives at the same time in the Catholic Church in the 11th century. Now, if that doesn't raise an eyebrow, then we have some historical context there for you. The great Roman Empire was built actually by Charlemagne and his 4 wives.
He said that there's more government corruption in polygynous nations. I don't know if you caught that, right? And I'm like, how can there be more government corruption in a polygynous nation over a monogamous? Now, I guess it's possible because you got to look at the nation, right? Maybe, but does it lend to it being more corrupt? I don't think so. I think if you have a man that has a lot. So I went to the Biblical Families Retreat. The first one I went to was a winter retreat, and there was a guy there. I think his name was George. He had two wives. One was older and one was younger. But it was on Sunday. We were doing the church service, and he was across the room from me, and I was looking at him with his family, and he had his one wife on one side, his young wife on the other, and he had kids all the way from like baby, like real small baby, up until about 18 years old, maybe 20, and like so he probably had about 12 kids, I think, and like 8 of them were boys, but they were like teenage, almost men. And he was there in the middle, and they're all standing there, and they were all worshiping. And he's there right in the middle of them, like a patriarch. And I was thinking, how can that be wrong? And I'm like, so now think about a guy like that. Okay, he's got a little militia. He's got a bunch of able-bodied young men. Now you got thousands of families like that. And you're going to tell me that the government they could push us around so easily? I believe that polygyny was one of the things God gave it to us because he wanted to limit government's control. It keeps them honest. When you got a guy with like 1.6 children and he's been divorced and he's a shell of himself because he's been ran through the courts, he's a lot easier to push around than a man like that. Am I wrong?
Well, one thing here is that I think we should be very careful to conflate certain ideas because we have statecraft here and we have internal state security, all which is a product of the moral values of that society. And we see this once again happening in the West, we see a complete collapse of moral values simply because people are losing their religious conviction. People are not bound by a single set of moral codes, and which then radiates out to every aspect of society. So to come to the conclusion that polygyny actually fosters corruption, that's really it could, let me be honest, it could be if such a society is based upon a moral set of values that actually fosters dishonesty. But I mean, this is why I argue from the beginning, biblical patriarchy that expects you to speak the truth. Now, listen here, people are going to lie. It is part of human nature to be sinful. And that's why we have Torah and the rules of the Bible to dictate us to act in a proper way. But in no way can you describe to say, let's see, your polygyny would be blamed for corruption or anyway a collapse within society. I think it really depends on the collective moral values of that society.
Yeah. Makes sense. Ryan, did you have anything on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I just wanted to add again, he leads in with this psychological approach to control the mindset of the viewer. Now he leads in from the emotional appeal first cousin straight into, can it save the West? And he says absolutely not. Never mentions marriage in the West because that was the topic, but he goes right to the whole entire West. And if I'm a listener, I'm like, well, there's no way it's going to save the West, right? I mean, of course not. And then he goes into the reward for the listener, the justice, calling you stupid, and name calling and giving justice to the viewer. And so he's already won his audience over with that type of tactic. I see this again with Andrew. I think it's a maybe he's not the best debater. I don't know.
Well, I would just add one thing before you mention that, Aubrey, is if anyone goes, check out Pearl's response to him. Okay. Pearl did a very honest assessment, and if you look at the comments, they're overwhelming in our favor. Most people see right through his BS.
And now, they're friends, by the way.
Yeah, and she's friendly with them, but she gave a very fair and honest assessment. She didn't agree with us on everything, but she's like, look, this might be the answer. We're already polygynous. She's like, we're not monogamous. Why are we pretending to be? So. Exactly. Go watch her response. If you don't know, I can post the link here, but it's definitely worth checking out. And then leave a comment because I love for her to respond to the rest of the video because she only did about like the first maybe hour or so. What were you going to say, Aubrey?
No, I just wanted to say I think one of the key things about this debate was, I mean, I've been watching The Crucible for years at end, and I've enjoyed it thoroughly. And I really was honored to be on The Crucible, to be honest with you guys. But once again, I think that this comes from my martial arts background. I always know that there is always going to be an unfair fight. You never fight by the rules. And you're going to try to get an advantage or leverage upon it as much as possible. And And so, yes, what listen here, if a fight steps my way, I'm not going to back down, especially if it's an easy one. But at the end of the day, there was definitely things that we will learn as a community here, and the manner in which everything goes about this. Because once again, if you look at the debate Andrew Fall and the set up and the comments Pearl brought, I think for the Crucible, it's just a nice fun game and a street no holds barred debate, and see who gets under whose skin the first.
Yeah.
Because I think there is some way of how to determine what is truthful if somebody is really rattled. And you can see this in Rob's passion and how he debated, because he's really convicted and convinced of his topic. But if you look at what Pearl did, Pearl's a very pragmatic approach towards this. And she said, hey, listen here, we look at already that relationships are a mess. She's been critical of most women and their lack of really knowing what they really want. And we see that this is actually where the society is just descending down this abyss of uncertainty. We can just see once again that women find themselves in such a position that they really are hurting themselves, and in the long term, we're going to see a complete collapse. Subject to the study you mentioned during the debate, that by 2030 we're going to see a significant amount of women either be childless or single mothers, and it's not going to benefit society at all.
Awesome.
There was also, hold on real quick. There's also two conclusions he drew in his opening remarks, talking about the affordability of these biblical marriages, and also drew another similar one with virtuous women in the church. He went on this popped up later in the debate as well, where he talked about in the Western church how you're not going to produce more virtuous women this way. And it never was the reason why presented. And is it not because forbidden marriage? Are we not forbidding marriages in the Western church today? And that really is the real reason. And with that being in there, is saving marriage a little bit more worthy to talk about in that way? What do you guys think?
Well, Rick, Ryan, and Rob, this is once again, I'm from a standpoint that the state shouldn't be involved at all in marriages. The state shouldn't be regulating this. The state shouldn't even dictate it. It is marriage is born from spiritual and sometimes a pragmatic institution out of the past, and so we have this. We see that people are people have become part of a parent or subjects to parent states where, listen, if I don't wipe my nose, will the state does it? If I won't wipe my bum, will the state do this? Everybody's got so reliant to the state, and nobody's actually thinking for themselves any longer. This is definitely something for the churches to think about and to debate about. But once again, they need to go back to the foundation. And you've mentioned it. If you look at what we see in the Bible, we see on one side we see the Bible and the reality of polygyny, and how it's been actually hidden away for 1800 years, and how it's been practiced either before 200 years before Messiah and thereafter. And this is definitely, once again, a religious community argument, nothing to do with the state. But I think one of the things that you cannot shy away from the debate is that we try to bring in a religious argument into a sociological argument with no central authority to make sure that it would be governed or managed in a certain way. Once again, it is for the church or the community or the assembly, the ecclesia, to make that determination, but they cannot shy away from the reality of what biblical text.
Well, one thing I wanted to mention. Okay, when I said he was referring to the 5 reasons why Christian men should pursue polygamy. The video I made, the very first reason I presented was there's a scarcity of virtuous women. What do I mean by that? That means most women are not protecting their sexual purity. Am I wrong? No, I'm not wrong. Now, men may be protecting their sexual purity, but it's only because it's involuntary celibacy. They're not able to get women, so there are a lot more men that aren't having sex than there are women, a much higher percentage. My whole thought process behind it was to say, how are you going to convince all these men to go out now and marry all these women that have been giving the milk away for free. Now you want them to buy the cow. And how are you going to convince them to do it? Under monogamy only, I don't think you got a shot. Because what a man does is he thinks you just went through a rack of guys for the last 15 years, and now you want me to marry you and commit to only one when give you my one golden ticket when you've been giving it away to everybody for free. That doesn't even make sense. It's not logical. It's not fair. So that's what I was saying. And he went off on some tangent to say, the church, the secular, whatever is producing a secular culture is producing more virtuous. I'm not saying that men are virtuous. I'm only talking about sexual purity. There's women that are not protecting theirs, and they're still expecting lifelong monogamy from men that will marry them, and they're wondering why no men are stepping up to marry them. Now Andrew will say that it's because of feminism, right? That they're waiting longer to get married because they've been told to pursue their education. And I'm like, that's BS. How do I know? I got into this conversation with somebody after the debate, and I said, listen, you guys haven't been in the position to know this is true. I have. Not to sound cocky, I lived in this world for most of my life. My friends were the Chads. They were the guys banging multiple women at the same time. Almost always, like 90% at least, those girls wanted to marry them. They were holding out for the commitment, but guess what? My friends weren't proposing. You know why? Because they had too many options. Only after the girl gets older, she hits the wall, her biological clock starts ticking louder, then she lowers her standards and she'll marry an average good provider or a chain-smoking slob like Andrew. Only then. So for him, he thinks, no, women aren't getting married because they're they're banging the Chads, and the Chads aren't asking. So there's a complete disconnect. You got women that want they would get married to certain guys. They want they're hypergamous, so they want the top tier men, which is why I said in that debate, if a girl's banging you repeatedly, if she's having sex with you, she wants to marry you. She's not just banging you to bang. Now she might bang you once, you might get lucky, but if she's having sex with you repeatedly, she wants to commit.
I think that this is where we see also that this is where Pearl really picked it up, and she's really smart, and she picked up on this thing, because if you look at the recent studies coming out, I mean, 2 out of 5 men under the age of 30 have never had sex before. I mean, that is 40% of our population. And this is once again hints at what your argument was, is that 5% of all men are the men that are having sexual intercourse with the women, with 70 to 90% of all women. And these men have no interest. There's no incentive for them to engage marriage or to settle down with a woman, because you know what? They're getting all their needs met by just cycling through all the women. And so what you have is you actually have these men setting up the woman for failure, because once again, if a woman is 18 and she's going to Dubai and she's getting on these fancy yachts and everything, I mean, she's drawn by the glitz and glamour of this lifestyle, just to be once again jettisoned over a period of time because there's somebody younger and fresher. Ultimately, what then happens is that she's stuck, because now her biological clock is kicking in and she has to settle down, because you know what, either her grandparents did that and they had happy families, but already she's laid the foundation for us. And as you said, some average Joe Schmo will have to pick up on her and care for her, and has to enjoy to pay for it what some other guy already got free.
And 85% of the time, well, what will happen is she'll marry the average guy. She'll get bored after a couple of years, and then 85% of the time, the women file for divorce. This is when I disagree that this won't save marriage in the West, because what will happen is the women are hypergamous. They want to get married to the men, the top 5%, but the top 5% have so many options. They're like, why would I ever give this up for one? You don't have to, bro. You can marry 4 if you want to. Many of them probably wouldn't even do it, but at least if they knew they could, they might propose. Chad, I know, I live this. It's like, I'm not getting in that cage, man. Why would I get in that cage when I have all this, So yes, it would save marriage in the West. Now, people might argue that some of those women wouldn't marry those men. I don't disagree. Some of them wouldn't marry the men, but some of them would. And I think the more that did, the more commonplace it became. And then she'd see good examples all around us of people that were actually happy and thriving. And then I think it would spread.
Well, it's definitely an interesting data point because we don't have that data. It's never been done before. Is it not a Bible prophecy that marriages will be forbidden in the last days? I mean, what's happening in the church today is you see, you got your numbers, 2 women to 1 man in the church. And what does the church say? You cannot marry 2. So why would they even, what data point do we have to measure? We have no metrics in that area. And so Andrew, strategically can skip over these things and, talk about, one man can't afford 2 anyway. And, this problem in the church cannot be fixed because he's going off of the current model that is there.
Let's get into the can't afford, because I'd love to talk about that. That to me is the most ridiculous argument. The equivalent would be like saying, it doesn't lessen your bills to have roommates. Why have roommates? You're just going to have more people. You're going to have more people eating, and because we're sharing the bills, bro. I mean, I can't believe people have to go to these long, crazy explanations to try to explain away something that's so simple. All you have to do is use a little bit of your brain, and you can say, "Oh yeah, that makes sense."
Oh, I think one thing we need to look at in this, so this is brought up by both Andrew and his wife regarding the childbearing years or child rearing years of a woman, and then the society has sold them this idea that they have to get educated. There is some statistics that really underscores this point very strong, and to some extent I do agree with Andrew on this point. However, we need to understand that some of the interpretation to the statistics can also be one-sided and flawed, but to some extent there is some credence to what he said. The thing here is that people need to understand is that with regards to polygyny, is that if a lady wants to engage a polygynous relationship, she can actually study while she is in childbearing years, and she has a support structure to support her through that. She has a husband that can guide her, husband that can earn. Maybe she has a sister wife that can support her with the child, or an experienced woman that can assist her. But at the same time, if she wishes to continue studying, she can actually do that until that phase is done, and then move on to the next season of her life.
That's a great point, because it's not one or the other. She can still go to school. But I'd say
real quick, did you agree with the statistical numbers he gave for representing the ages, Aubrey? Because I've also heard in the timeline that he used, girls are actually marrying a lot younger than 17 years old. Is that true?
Well, it really is based upon society and culture. We see in Africa, girls are sexually active up until from the age of 8 years old already, especially in sub-Sahara Africa. Some of them get married at the age of 15 and 16, where they have to get approval from either the chief or the courts to get into these marriages. So I'm using these extremes just to show that it's not something that one can just look and blanket and think that it's everywhere the same. So Andrew definitely, based upon the argument, he stuck to the argument, saying that it's Western centric. But Africa does have a lot of studies based upon this, and I actually studied these. And so, you know what, it's once again, it's a clash of worlds. It's a different in approaches. But one thing about this whole debate with regards to Andrew, where I think he's being a little dishonest towards his own ideological proclivity, and that is that he is a declared paleo-conservative, as well as that he's committed to his Greek Orthodox ideology. Both of those are heavily influenced by its cultural dynamics where those are practiced, and so does not make space for the biblical idea of what marriage certainly is. Highly influenced, and then hypocritically would argue that despite the fact that they have a certain position, it's incommensurate with biblical teaching.
Okay, let's. I guess just to conclude, the only thing I was going to add is what he disagreed with is that it was all based on feminism, and what I was trying to say is the Chads aren't proposing; they're not. There may be men that want to marry these women, and they're waiting, but it's not the top 5%. because they have so many options. They are killing it right now because and this is what I believe changed. If you really, they would say, well, why did this work? Why did monogamy work for so many years? Because there was a stigma around sex before marriage, right? You didn't want to look like a slut. And you very, very rarely do people even shack up. They didn't live together. So what happened was because women are hypergamous, they weren't just sleeping with guys that were completely out of their league because they weren't sleeping with anybody. So they were matching up with their equal. If they were a 7, they were probably finding a 7 or 8 themselves. But now you got, 4s through, 8s sleeping with the 9s and 10s, thinking they're going to land a 9 or 10 because the guy's having sex with them. But the guys aren't proposing to them. And then now they're dragging their feet, wasting their best years. And then eventually they hit the wall. And then she marries a 5. And that's why it worked before, because there was a stigma around sex before marriage. And it was easier to find your sexual marketplace equal. And now it's everything out of whack because the girls are, like I said, banging the top tier men. Thinking they're going to play.
Look, and Rob, you're 100% correct, but we need to decide how far do we want to go back into history. I mean, if you look at the pioneers, the early pioneers of the United States, the guys that pioneered from the east to the west. I mean, a lot of these women, some of them were 16, 17, 18 years old, and some of them even 25, 26, maybe lost their husband during one raid, or they lost a family and they were put together in families that continued moving or crossing across the United States. But if we look even way back into early antiquity, we'd see girls getting married at the age of 14, 15. I mean, if she reached the age of 17, she was considered a spinster. So, we need to know how far do we want to go back. But we do know, and once again, as I said, I profile people. I do profiling. I study personalities and everything, and we need to understand that some girls are really physically at the age of 18. There's no difference between her and the age of 28. I'm not, and even younger. You'll get girls at the age of 16. No, I'm not here for my listeners. I'm not promoting marrying young girls. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that we see that a lot of women are at the age of 16. She's a woman already, and if she doesn't have a father that keeps a good tight rein on her, which once again I really am in favor of, there's going to be trouble with that girl, and she may get herself in trouble. And this is exactly the situation that you're talking about. I mean, if it's good for a 16-year-old, how much more for a 26-year-old that's been living in a cloister for her whole life and then unleashed to the world?
Great point. Did you hear the part where he said you'd be more likely to marry a skank? He said if you already have a virtuous woman. Did you catch that part? He said if you have a virtuous woman, you'd be more willing to marry a skank. And again, that was not what I said. What I said was, and I want every man actually that's watching this, I want you to answer this question in the comments. Would you be more willing to marry a girl with a past or a girl that wasn't your ideal? Maybe she's got a few kids, maybe she's widowed, whatever. If you knew that she was one of 3 of she was going to be one of 3 or 4, but not your one and only. Would you marry a girl like that? Would you be more likely or less likely to do that? Just drop it in the comments. I'm curious to hear. Because Andrew says, why would you marry a girl that didn't? He said a skank if you already had a virtuous woman, which is not what I said. I said we have a lot of women that haven't protected their purity, and how are we going to clean up the mess? This is a great way to fix it, because men would be more likely to forgive a woman's past if she's not trying to get him to confine him to only her for the rest of his life. At least some men would. Maybe I'm wrong. Drop it in the comments. Let us know.
While everybody's commenting on this, I think one thing, and this is something that I'm very strong about when coaching men, especially patriarchs, or men that are intended to be patriarchs, is to establish a culture within your household. People think that there's this whole idea amongst a lot of women that if a man walks into a room and a woman is naked on the bed, that he will just be overtaken by his instinct and just have sexual intercourse with her. First of all, misconception. That's a myth. It all depends on the man. It depends on his ideological or moral proclivities or commitments. And we see the same in our households. A man and a man, primarily together with his wife, will establish a certain culture in that household. And if they are committed to adding another woman to his house, then I mean, a patriarch will be very smart in who he adds there, because this woman can really enhance or destabilize the established culture that is in that house. And so that argument that he will just is more drawn to a skank, I mean, that's a tough call. He didn't provide any substantiation for that argument, but it goes once again to the assumption that I laid off earlier, that if a woman is naked, a man will just do his thing. That is not true. That's a misconception. It's false. I think, once again, a patriarch is smart. He wants to see women being added to his household that actually can enhance and move his vision forward.
Yes.
100.
All right, let's go back to sharing the screen. Let's take a look, and then we're going to bring in a caller. We got somebody in the waiting room right now. I just want to see if there's anything here for us to break down before we do that.
I went in depth into all of your positions. Him just being polygynist has zero to do with the overthrow.
No, not necessarily zero. But they went from 70 people entering Egypt to 2.4 million people leaving Egypt in 430 years. Monogamy can't duplicate. You can't multiply at that rate under monogamy.
Yes. Okay. Wait.
Just the math. The math alone tells us that every man had to have an average of 4 wives. So people will say, no, it was only for the rich men, certain kings. And
who cares, dude? Who cares? Can we get to how it's going to help the West?
Yeah, we got 1 in 3. We got 1 in 3 children being raised in fatherless homes right now. The number of women that are going to be single by the year 2030 is somewhere around 50%. Now you're saying that's better than being in a polygynous.
Okay, can we start with the argument?
See how he changed the subject? He didn't answer that question. That's what I want Andrew to tell me. We got half the women by 2030 that are going to be single. I think it was like a Pew Research study. 1 in 3 children raised in fatherless homes. That number is expected to double by 2030, and 50% of the women between like 25 and 44 are going to be single by that time. Is he saying that that's better? Because there's the answer to the question. Can Christian polygamy save marriage in the West? I think it actually not just save marriage, it could save the West from collapsing. Because if you got a country full of kids that were raised in fatherless homes, they become criminals, depressed, sexually active, younger, all kinds of bad stuff, high school dropouts. How can a society thrive like that? You got to get the fathers back in the homes. How do you do that? I see Christian polygyny is a great answer, but he didn't answer the question. He just changed the subject.
I think also one of the biggest concerns here, and I know this is where you and I may differ on this argument, but I'm concerned more with the idea that these marriages or households would be used as vehicles to bring women to repentance. I mean, if you have a woman that you already were married to a woman that believes in the Bible, and you bring in a woman that actually doesn't believe in the Bible at all, that's just a recipe for disaster. We see problems. I think if you're gonna bring a woman into your house, you need to bring it to repentance as well. This is commensurate with the idea of Yeshua Messiah, or what we see Jesus Christ, that he is, if you come to repentance, he is busy preparing a mansion for you with his Father. This mansion has many rooms, but for you to really enter into that covenant with him, you require to come to repentance, and that's it.
I think there's a study that says when a man comes to Christ, there's like a 90% chance that the rest of the family all becomes Christians too. When a woman comes to Christ, it's like 17%. So
I want to, and this brings it, because this is actually what I'm doing my PhD on. Now, there was a group of in the Swiss Alps known as the Aldense and the Waldense. Now, the Waldense, some of them were polygynists. And the Catholics actually went forth and tried to proselytize them or convert them to Catholicism. And they had a big issue with trying to get these guys converted, because what they did is they would convert one of the wives, and she would go home. And by the time she reaches home, the other wives would have reconverted her back to their original religion. And they had trouble, because if they didn't take the whole family and convert the whole family, there's no way for them to convert to Catholicism. And so the Catholics actually went and they just exterminated them all.
Somebody mentioned Andrew's wife has a past too. So, yeah.
We all have a past.
Yeah, we all have a past. We'll just keep it at that. All right, let's bring in Vaughn, I think. Let's see here. Here we go. Vaughn, what's up, brother?
Hello, everyone. How y'all doing today? How's everybody going?
We're doing
Nice
great.
to meet you, Vaughn.
So I'm actually in the Pete's Parlay with Men
You're a
Yeah.
good company.
on
You're a good.
Telegram, as well as the he has two sections, right? He has the Patreon one, and then he has the Telegram. So I'm in that group. Ryan, you're the one that messaged me, right, on Telegram?
Yes, sir.
Good deal. Yeah, and you stayed toward the end when I had called in toward the end.
That's right.
Let me make sure my mic is turned up.
Very
So
well
yeah,
done.
Yeah, Tom.
yeah, I got a couple pointers. I mean, and then we can, I can kind of,
Sure.
piggyback off of you guys. But yeah, I got a couple pointers for you, Rob, as well as you, Aubrey. Before I had called in, and what I've noticed, because I was in the middle of my shift over at FedEx when I had first listened to the live stream, and let me tell you, I was like so frustrated. Like, my skin was boiling, and it made me go 10 times faster to complete my route, because it's like I had to get home because I want to see if I can call in, because it was driving me like that like crazy. But just before I get into it, just a little bit of background about me, or just to introduce myself to you, Rob. It's a pleasure to meet you. Finally, I know you got a whole group going on with, singles or whatever. I'm interested to know more about that if you want to toward the end or later on in the email. Let me know about your group going on. What's it called again?
It's called Maxima Potentia. It's all about.
Okay, so is it like it's like singles and just understanding that,
It's about leveling up.
man.
Leveling up as men. If a lot of the guys, their goal is to be in a polygynous marriage. But, you have to be a man. A woman isn't going to share an average man, right? You're going to have to be exceptional. So we want to help men level up in all that area.
Yeah, like right now, I'm still a knowledge sponge. I'm just trying to learn as much as possible, because I would say, Rob, your content when it got me, I want to say that I'm most likely like your target audience, because I'm a young man, and what I've heard you talk about a lot is the fact that when we start off young dealing with women, we can kind of get sprawled up in confusion on whether or not we want to pursue women seriously or just recreational use only.
Right.
And I was struggling with that, about myself. I played sports in high school, and I noticed that I had crushes on multiple women at the same time, but it didn't really bug me. Like it didn't feel unnatural, right? It felt natural to have crush on multiple women, but yeah, I was just kind of weirded out by it, considering how I got to go down this moral path with God and everything. So it wouldn't make sense if I try to go for all of them. Right. So I would go for one at a time, and what that has slowly done is it kind of like deterred me from finding what my purpose is in life. It was definitely something monogamy only in Christianity and churches, which I grew up in, played a huge part on why I struggle with any kind of social awkwardness with women, is because I was prioritizing them, because I have to, I gotta make sure she's good. I gotta make sure she's the one. And when I woke up to this truth, it kind of really, kickstarted me. It like propelled me into purpose. And I found out about the truth I want to say just 5 years ago. I'm 25 years old now. And when I hit age about 20 is when I really fell into this truth. And even then, I still wish I would have found it sooner, because it really, I stayed playing sports and active and physical and stuff. So I'm not no beta simp, I know it takes work to be a man. And I learned through my trials and tribulations.
Good job.
But yeah, just to get into it. So I had some pointers on what I've noticed, when I first was listening to the debate. I want to say, Rob, when it came to the debate, I will have to honestly say you did lose the debate. You lost it because there's nothing you could do. It was obviously they had favoritism, right? Yeah. They had, it was a biased sort of thing, because it was his channel, his territory, and he rage baited you. Rage baited you. And then a pointer for you, Aubrey, is I noticed that, obviously, I'm pretty sure English is not your first language, right?
No, it's my third language.
On top of that, your mic was kind of like, hard to hear. That gave off the impression that perhaps you were gullible, And that I noticed toward the end, he was trying to be like, I don't think you actually believe this or something like that. He was kind of trying to convey that message to the audience. But I know you have a firm belief on this, how Jesus, Yeshua doesn't necessarily condemn polygyny. And then lastly, to really kind of get you guys' responses in how you feel about what I've noticed when it comes to the Black community, right? Consider I was raised in the Black churches. When you mentioned something about the women going for the top 10% of men or the top 5% of men, when it comes to Black women, I've noticed firsthand, and a lot of people who are in that space when it comes to Black marriages and Black relationships, they'll tell you that with Black women is a 10 out of 10 man is probably not the ceiling. For a Black woman, like for any other family, the ceiling is a 10 out of 10 man, but for Black women, the ceiling is past 10, right? So they're shooting for an extraordinary man, and Black men we just can't do that considering the cards we're dealt. But yeah, so what do you guys have to say to what I've noticed and to kind of get into it? So what do you guys think did I hit on the nail? Like,
Rob, while you're formulating your answer, I'm going to be fast because mine's easy. I have a mic on its way. It should be here, depending on the strike.
I mean, the headset's a little better though.
Well, but I don't look good at this, man. I want to look as handsome as you do. But the fact is, the matter is that I have a mic on its way, and it should be here, depending on the postal strike here in Canada. And so, issue fixed. I got a lot of hits back from that, and people were criticizing. So it's an easy fix.
Fair enough.
I was just gonna, add to what women are gonna do this. Men and women are gonna do it anyway. Men are gonna
exactly
side chicks. Women are gonna share men. I posted something yesterday, I think it was, that non-mono man that Instagram page put up, and the woman, she was just like, she was watching Sister Wives, and she's like, why don't you all just bring the man in the house, work out your differences with each other? Then everybody's got a family unit. You can share the bills. She's like, hello. I'm like, yeah. It's just kind of common sense. They're going to do it anyway. Why are we trying to restrict them? Why are we trying to restrict them? Because they just do it like a degenerate. They lie about it.
Exactly. And it's like, I'll say this last thing about myself, and then we don't have to, I don't have to keep talking about myself. But like, since I've discovered it so early enough, I would say, about the truth about everything and how God doesn't necessarily come for you as a man if you have that natural, genuine desire for multiple women. I feel like I'm at a place in my life where, I just have a fire, bro. My goal right now is to find work. I have a lot of energy, and I'm making sure to get it all out. I'm trying to, just basically, empty the tank right now. I'm looking for work anywhere, so that way I can eventually, I got concepts of a plan on what I plan to do for the rest of my life. Haven't really figured too much about it yet, but right now I'm just trying to have fun. And on top of that, I got to make sure I'm staying on top of my, taking responsibility over my life and doing the studies, doing the work, and making sure I'm not shying away from, that sort of thing. But yeah, so it's kind of tough, man, just knowing that the world may never accept it.
Well, I just want to jump in. I think, one thing we talked about, I don't know if you caught this in the debate, is that, your job is to accomplish your mission. So it's good that that's what you're thinking about, is getting work, figuring out what God's plan is for you, and then finding the right helpmates to come alongside you and help you accomplish it. That's what women were created for. Now, sometimes a man has a big vision, a big mission, and they need 4 women to help them do it. They can't do it with one. They need one girl that's good with the kids, another girl that's good with the money, another girl that's good with people, whatever. Look, God's cool with it. The women get a covering in the process, and the man gets his helpmates. Now, it's a lot of responsibility. Aubrey can tell you, two women are more responsibility than one. That's why a lot of men would just rather have a side chick, because it's very little responsibility. This is the way God.
I've been doing that at my age.
Harder. It's much harder now, but people choose not to do it because it's stigmatized, but also because it's just easier to not do it. So I would just encourage you, man, keep going down the right path.
For sure.
This path that you're on the right path. I wish I would have found this information when I was your age. I don't know where.
That's what I meant when you kept, mentioning it in your past. And I want to say I watched most of your videos, and I look forward to more content you do.
I just want to point out one thing real quick before we go over. I want you to get your timestamp ready, if you would. I want to put out something. We have a liar in the in the comments. She said that I brought Aubrey in and Glenn didn't know. Okay, so we're going to look at this. So you're either really disorganized over there, or Glenn, or you're a liar, or maybe Glenn's just not telling you something. But hi, Glenn. Thanks for reaching out with the opportunity to debate Andrew Wilson on the Whatever podcast. Since I'm covering my travel and accommodations, I said a few terms. Look at this: accompaniment. How do you say that? Accompaniment.
Yep.
All right. I like the possibility to bring someone with me if I choose to do so. Look, and then there it is again. I would still want to bring someone. He couldn't prepare for Andrew couldn't prepare for us. I'm sure he'll watch all my stuff and prepare rebuttals. He prides himself in being able to defeat people who has no knowledge. This would allow that, right? Because he wouldn't be able to study up on them. So multiple times I said, and even down here, I said I'd still want to bring somebody. So yes, multiple times we told your side that we were bringing Aubrey. So please stop lying, Michelle. And this was the little troll that I did the podcast, Glenn Lawrence's podcast with, that has a husband and a boyfriend, and got mad at me because she thinks man wrote the Bible, and she disagrees with her father's, basically the Bible. She doesn't think it's accurate because she says man wrote it. But then she says that I'm dishonoring it. Like, well, you can't have it both ways. Either it's inaccurate, or I'm dishonoring it. It can't be.
Hey, I watched that stream. Actually, when she kind of got off the rail on you, I actually got a thought experiment for her and you, Rob, about how polygyny polygyny probably has the potential to make sure Jesus mixes the people's hearts. However, polygamy, I don't think polygamy is going to save the West necessarily. I believe polygyny will, but I think it's going to fail off of the fact that polygamy won't save it. I think it can save it, or if anything were to save the West, it would be polygamy. However, it doesn't look like it's going to be that. With that being said, I don't think anything else can. I think, considering how we're at the maximum potential of all this mess, but my thought experiment is just on that point, do you think that polygamy at the rate we're going, as an umbrella, right? They're going to, flood. They're going to, it's not just going to be believers. It's going to be unbelievers practicing this. If there's no longer a stigma on, if it's out in the open like that, it's not just going to be a godly aspect in it either. That's going to take the forefront. I feel like what's going to lead the front is the degeneracy. Is just going to be more, pornography than ever. And I feel like that's going to flood the minds of a lot of children in those families. You're not going to see homosexuality go anywhere. You're not going to see any of that go anywhere. So, yeah, what's your take on, or if you want to, have anything about that?
Okay, so you know what? There's this whole misconception in the world that if you're a sinner, you're not going to be successful, and if you're a believer, you're never going to fail. That's not true. It's about human skill. It's about support structures. You can be in the secular world an unbeliever, and you can have some great skills, and you have a great support structure, or you can be in a Christian community and you have no support structure and you actually have no skills. But let me be honest. Christian communities, biblical values, biblical principles lend itself to those that actually adhere it to be more successful than their secular counterparts. The compassion that we should have for each other in a community is also there, should also be there to assist and underscore that whatever we do as an individual benefits our community, but at the same time we want to see success. And this is the same true for marriages. We see marriages, there are people that are secular that get married, and some of them are successful and some of them are unsuccessful. The same within Christian churches, the same in biblical communities. The same would be happening, and this comes down to your question and your statement, is that it's the same with polygyny. We're going to see, although I do believe in secular society, people will be more drawn to polyamory, because polyamory has a lack of responsibility and just more of a sexual gratification aspect, where polygyny is really concerned with the well-being of the woman, the children, and for the man, so the patriarch, to see his vision realized. And in my case, for instance, the two exceptional women that I have in my life, I mean, they're highly qualified. Rujane's got 5 degrees. Jolene's got 3. I'm the one that's tagging behind. But at the end of the day, for me, it is important. And this is one message that I want to give to you and to all the young listeners here you're listening. If you're having a vision to get married, even if you're married just to one woman or more than one woman, do not compromise on your standards, and do not compromise with which woman you spend your life with. I say this to all the men. It's going to be a little bit crude, but please bear with me. What's between your legs is more important than what's between hers. And I'm referring to your seed. Make sure that with which woman you share that seed is a woman that's worthy of it, and a woman that will give you children that you will enjoy for the rest of your life.
You got a timestamp for us?
Well said. So yeah, let me
real quick before the timestamp, I just want to add and piggyback on what Aubrey just said. You know, with women having a husband and a boyfriend on the side, you know, they have to be concerned with the DNA transfer. You know, the power in the seed. I mean, that's why it's outlawed in Scripture, right? That's why God said something about that, because that DNA from each man is getting in that woman, and it mixes, and that creates disharmony, discord. It destroys the marital bed. And there's just no way around that. And so there's just, you know, she accused Rob of you know, creating a new religion. Is that not a new religion right there?
Read this comment here. I'd love to tackle this because you guys know a little bit more about the mixing of seed. How is she? I hope this is a woman asking this question. Gosh, I hope you're not a man. How is she, if she is doing the same lifestyle as Rob, as well as her husband? First off, I'm married to one woman, just so you all know. And I was abstinent for like 6 years before that. If you think that's sinful, how is Rob not sinning? Does somebody want to explain the difference here?
I can kind of so yeah, basically that would basically mean that yeah, if you're a woman sharing multiple men, you're not going to be able to take care of multiple men, because that's not something a woman even desires. A woman doesn't even desire protection from like a woman desires protection from a man versus a man. He's the one that's protecting. When you have two protectors coming together sharing you, there's going to be fights that you can't break up, like physically. Like men, you know, they you know, deal with stuff physically. That was my response.
Pete Rambo did a video on this. I think it's called "Why Women Need Sex." Very catchy title, Pete. Good job. But they cover the scientific papers very, very intelligently. This is a well-studied topic, very well studied, that the DNA gets into the woman, and it crosses into her DNA. She is marked. Okay. And then when you mix seed, their DNA, you have multiple men's DNA in that woman. That's why God forbade it.
So what Ryan was referring here to is what we call in genetic studies, or in the Department of Genetics, as microchimerism. It's the matching between certain different sets of DNA. This is actually well documented for the last 800 years in animal husbandry. It's a highly radioactive topic presently in the Department of Genetics, to such an extent that people would actually go into fist fights, engage in fist fights with regards to it. But I mean, this concept of microchimerism actually predates all the way back to Aristotle, because Aristotle actually was made, one of the first individuals that made reference of it. So we have some info on it. We see this, as I said, I'm from South Africa. I come from a farm. We've seen this happening. And for those who want to read it, go read more about microchimerism. As I said, make sure that you read both sides of the coin, because it is highly radioactive.
Let's do that timestamp if you're ready, Vaughn.
All right. So on the debate, so it's basically toward the end is what I called in. We're gonna have to go where I first called in, because he was kind of just, you know, kind of picking on me. I didn't get my hair cut yet. I didn't get my line up yet. So he was picking on me. So yeah, the first timestamp,
You got number?
I think we're talking about, the black family. If you want to go to 452.
Sure. Let me share my screen real quick.
100 45200.
Okay, here we go.
I think I want to say I talked on it a little bit. I would say a lot of it has to do with the fact that we try to integrate cultures as a black species. When we come over here, brought over here, and we're integrated from slavery on up. When they freed us, we adopted y'all's strategy to
you adopted Christianity,
and it was a tradition. The reality is we adopted y'all's tradition, and it just didn't work.
Are you a Christian? Well, are you a Christian?
I am a believer in Christ.
So then you adopted. Why did you adopt it?
Adopt polygyny?
No, why did you adopt Christ?
Because there was nothing that Christ said against polygyny or biblical marriage.
So you only adopted Christ because
that it can bring to a family.
So you adopted Christ as an affirmation bias because Christ didn't say anything.
You could pause. So
let's say
Christ before everything.
Hold on, let me pause.
So before.
Okay, go ahead, Bob.
So yeah, basically, after that, he's kind of like trying to like basically tell me I have no logical basis when I'm mentioning the fact that when we're brought over here from a different continent, during the transatlantic slave trade, and Han Solo, I gotta look into more about him because he probably knows more about this than me. But I feel like the black family only had the white family to go as an example by. And I'm sure there were black families that were able to maintain things like arranged marriages, anything in relation to that. I'm sure there were black families that are able to do it, but what resulted is cheating. I feel like everybody was cheating on each other in black families. And I want to say black women, considering how they've been poisoned by like feminism, the feminism narrative that you got to go out here, you got to work, get your education. They've been poisoned by that. And the aggression that was still in America, considering how we were still dealing with racism. We were still dealing with a lot of, segregation and things of that nature, where the black women didn't have the same opportunity as white women. So you top on the fact that they're not the same as, equal to their husband. We're the black community. I honestly say we are dealing with a lot of these, horrible results of feminism the most. Like we got it the worst. And yeah, black women, they're more aggressive when it comes to their territorial nature brought up from that trauma of, slavery, and then coming from slavery and trying to look at the blueprint of the white families. And that explains why black fathers getting kicked out, not being there was for a good minute. They're trying to change it now. They're trying to make it say like, black fathers are more, involved with their children than anybody. But before, it was kind of like it was a stigma for black men who were, or black kids who were in single parent households. It was a stigma that, the black father just wasn't there. They just left the house and went to go grab milk. When the reality is black men were just scared of black women. They were scared of the mothers because they were that much more aggressive than the single white mothers. So yeah, that's what we were talking about there.
Chats, it says somebody said talking to Michelle, it says you do realize that polygyny was practiced up until the Council of Trent. And then Michelle agreed, yes, it is a historical fact. And then she says it doesn't make it Christian. The church gets to decide that. So this is what's wild, right? If you think about the people that had direct access to God, the prophets all came through them. They wrote the Bible. Some of them spoke with God face to face. God called them a friend, some of them. And they all had plural marriages. And then the church fathers, our Christian fathers all practiced polygyny, but it changed over time. So it really is kind of like a game of telephone is the way I look at it. If something changed over time, and now we're thinking that we understand what the Bible meant better than the people who wrote it thousands of years ago.
Exactly. And with the black family, there's no telephone.
And where does it say in Scripture, Michelle? Where does it say that in Scripture that the church gets to decide that now? Where is that in the Bible?
some context to this is that the church has outlawed polygyny. Hasn't even been 500 years. It was 1563 during the Council of Trent, and that I mean, if you consider that the early church, maybe the first century, were just getting themselves arranged, we're sitting with about 1500 years of history. And I made mention of Charlemagne earlier. And Charlemagne got married to 4 of his women together in a Catholic church. He was the Roman Empire of the Holy Roman Empire, so Holy Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. So there's a lot of development there. But just coming back to what Vaughn says now, I don't want to hash out the transatlantic slave concept. But yes, for those black slaves that came over from Africa to North America, I mean, we've seen this. That there was a complete collapse of family structure. I mean, this is well evident. Slavery across the world, the Burberry slave trade, was once again destruction of families. That's what slavery in large does. And so you had when post the Civil War and the process of having these slaves integrated into society, you had an issue where these black slaves and freemen and free women had to reimagine themselves. They had to restore whatever they had to do. They had to go through, how do we determine these family structure? And it was greatly influenced by the proselytes and the evangelists at that stage, through their Christian ethics, to establish once again these family structures. Some black men and black women were naturally drawn to establish it. We just generally just naturally good at doing something, and you see others who need some help and they failed at it. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest demise of black families is definitely the American welfare system of the 1960s. We've seen that it incentivized a lot of these families, and single mothers. They were incentivized to say, listen, if you're going to be a single mother, you're going to get paid for having these amount of children. There was no need for men to pick up on the responsibility. But now what we're seeing today is we're actually seeing what these black families have gone through in the 1960s and 70s. Now it's across racial and cultural lines. I think the only people that are the only racial group that is actually handling this at the moment are the Asians, and even some of the Southeast Asian groups as well, because they are so family orientated, where Caucasian families are losing it because they're not religious anymore. Black families are continuing from what they have, from the troubles and everything they had during the 1960s, 70s, and that's a big problem for us, because we're going to run into a criminal element that's going to destabilize society. And maybe the powers that be wants to get this destabilized, but not on my watch.
Yeah, if any community or if any race was polygynous, it would be black. It would be the black race leading the front. That's just my opinion.
Well, good for it. You go for it. The more allies we have in this battle, the better for us. I think one thing is this, because I'm from South Africa, and if we look at a lot of these aspects, we have seen that the majority of black cultures have a natural community orientation in their psychological makeup and how they establish these relationships, where a lot of Caucasians are very individualistic. Both have their strengths and both have their weaknesses, but we definitely see that black families in North America are rising up more in favor of polygynous and group relationships.
Fair enough. And if anybody's black, they want to come talk to me about it, feel free.
I want to jump in there with the point that someone brought up that I'd like to dissect with you guys. So one of the things Andrew said was, we talked about, I don't remember what point he was trying to make, but he talked about how the majority of virtuous women would end up with a small percentage of the men, which would leave less virtuous women for all the other men, right? He said something like that. And I don't think he's wrong on that. I think that if we remove the legal mandates and the negative stigma, that women would, the top men would marry multiple women. Now the question that I got from people, they said, what are you going to do with the other men? The 80% of men that don't have any, right? That was what they said to me. How is it going to save the West when you got all these lost boys, as he mentioned, left out in the cold? And I said, well, there's nothing wrong with celibacy. I mean, to be honest, I don't know. I'd love to hear what your guys' thought is. My thought is look, you can't negotiate the consequences of obeying God. If God says that this is the way marriage is supposed to be, then you just got to take your hands off it and listen. Because if we try to change it, there's going to be negative consequences. But to try to figure it out in advance, really what you're saying is you know more than God. That's what essentially we're trying to say is, I don't think he understands that, men will be left out if we do it this way. Too many men will be left out, and then that will somehow play out badly. I think about the story in the Old Testament when the Israelites were all crying out for meat. Remember, they wanted to eat. They were in the wilderness, and God sent a strong wind, and he blew all these first Moses, he says, I'll feed everybody by tonight. I think God tells Moses. And Moses is like, how are you going to do that? He blows this strong wind, and all these birds come land on the ground, and they're able to eat meat. You remember that story?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know what God would do. How did it work out for the Israelites? Because it didn't destabilize their culture, their society. They thrived. They went from one person to overthrowing the greatest country in the history or in the world at the time in 500 years. So they did not destabilize. They did the opposite. So how would that work out for us now? Would God have more women be born than men? Maybe. He could do that. Maybe it's not 50-50 anymore. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
The interesting thing to consider here is you're talking about the 80-20 thing, 80% of the women sleeping with 20% of the men, right? Now, what does that look like in the church, right? Because if you put that same standard on the church today, is it really the top 10% of men, or what is the top percentiles of churches look like? And if the option was the available option for the marriage thing to change to be actually biblical in that church, what does that do to that church structure, right? And how does that build patriarchal outwardly? That's the question that I have, because what you have is these strong men in God that are leading those churches, and they don't have those options because they are forbidden marriage by God's standards. Right. And so that's what I'm looking to get answered here based on what you just asked, Rob.
Okay. So, Vaughn, if you want to comment, then I'll
I was about to say something short. So yeah, when I had started the debate with Andrew, my opening statement was how monogamy only was for fat, lazy losers who are afraid of the gym, addicted to corn, and just are all around men that were afraid of owning up to the fact that it's unfortunate, they're losers. And just one more thing, I've accepted the fact that I might never have a Proverbs 31 woman. I've accepted that fact that I might not ever get married, and for a while it just didn't sit right with me. But it's all about surrendering my life to Christ. That's what it's about. But yeah, if you want to go
okay, so I'm going to handle it from Vaughn's, from Vaughn. One, I'll be very careful to go with regards to monogamy is for losers, because we all start off monogamous. We all start off with a starter. We all start off with a starter pack. But I understand what you're saying. I think it definitely in a monogamy-only society, it builds complacency, especially for men. Women are generally just more productive than men. And so if a man starts seeing this, my wife's productive and I can take a little bit of a back seat in my marriage or my household, we will see women surge up and take more control, eventually leading to the complete collapse of that household. If a man has a responsibility to manage and govern and protect his wife and his household, and having that option, he's actually forced that if the potential is that a woman gets added to my household, I need to be ready whenever that happens. Because once again, we go into levirate marriages. You may not know when your brother may pass away, and you have to father a child on his behalf so that his estate gets bequeathed. And so we have that issue. But just to understand, we should be very careful, because eventually also we end up with monogamy, and we start celibate, we end celibate.
We start monogamy. It's just like keyword.
No, we start celibate.
Monogamy. Okay, yeah. And then keyword monogamy only, right? So if you try to sit here and say, I can only have one woman, that's where you sell yourself short. And then also on the other hand, if you try to claim yourself as an aspiring patriarch and then turn around and tell these men over here, you have too many women, you're taking all of them from me. You know, that's where the loser comes out.
Definitely, definitely.
Keyword
And I want to,
only.
and just to be true to the Bible, we see this in Luke 19, verse 11, the parable of the coins, where a master gives one coin to one of his servants, the other one, or bond servants, he gives another 3 and another 5, and he expects them to care for those coins. And this is really just money. But I think we can also extrapolate from that parable that if Father God gives us, our Heavenly Father gives us one wife, do right with her, build her out, lead, protect, govern, because some men, and I've made no secret of it, some men should just never marry. But the fact of the matter is, if you're given one wife, you do right with her, you lead, protect, and govern her as our Heavenly Father expected. If He gives you 3, you do right to them, you do exactly the same. If He gives you 5, you do same, because you know what, the master is going to come back and he's going to visit you and he's going to say that you do right, because at the end of the day, we as men, we're just stewards to these women. We're just stewards. Eventually, we need to hand them back to our Heavenly Father, and they are the test. They'll be witnesses to the manner in which we treated them and manage our household. Coming back to what we said earlier with regards to men, we need to understand, first of all, that on a one-on-one ratio, man to woman, we just accept that. Let's just, for the argument's sake, accept there's one man, one woman right throughout society. However, there's a few things that we need to take look at. First of all, men do stupid things. Okay, that's why our insurance payments are higher than women's. Okay, and that leads to us losing our lives. And so when we lose our lives, obviously there's less men. First of all. Secondly, we have people that are sodomites. So we're gonna scut them out of that group as well. And then we have men that will just be on higher levels, be incarcerated. And so you have immediately a complete diminishment of about 20% of men right there. So men at 8 to 10, you're already set with it. Now, anthropologically, we see that men consider anthropologists believe that there is about 10 to 15% of men that practice polygyny throughout history. I know there's instances with Issachar in the Bible that had a larger amount of polygynists, but and within the Israelite community, it could have been way higher than what these anthropologists believe. Remember, they look at a general principle here, or a general stat. But when we come back to what Rob and Ryan speak of, is that let's say polygyny is accepted as a form of union today across the Western world, we will see people engage in these relationships, and this is just human tendency in nature. There will be people that will make fun of it. We'll just engage in relationships just because we can, and they'll make fun and light of it. And then there's people that will take it serious, men that will actually say, well, listen here, if this is going to be the case, I need to step up. Then you're going to have women that's going to be a group of women that's going to be so smart and say, well, man, this makes sense to me. Where am I going to find a man that's actually going to be, that has the capacity? And there's the question. Most men, we've emasculated men to such an extent that they don't have the capacity today to even manage one woman. For goodness sake, they can't even manage themselves. And so at the end of the day, and I'm going to hand over to Rob, but at the end of the day, we see that there is not going to be sufficient men with the sufficient skills to manage a plural lifestyle. Now, that's something that we can bridge with good training. It's just basic logistics. But the mentality part and capacity, I come back to Luke 19, which meant some servants just does not have the capacity to manage more than one coin.
That's a great point. So even what you just said about men dying younger, being incarcerated, being gay, that right there, I mean, there's going to be a shortage of husbands to go around under monogamy only. It's going to leave a lot of women uncovered. So I think you make a great point.
We need to understand monogamy-only cultures, and this is one thing that I would love to have asked Andrew, but because him and I share that we are very anti-egalitarian, but monogamy-only societies are really egalitarian.
Yes.
It's a musical chair. It's musical chairs, and if you don't get that seat at the table, man, you're not seating at all.
I want to give a shout out to Glenn Lawrence. I think he's here watching. What's up, Glenn? He was the moderator We were not complaining about them. I said I did think you were a little bit biased toward him, Glenn. That's all I said. I don't blame you. I mean, you know this guy well, and I think you're probably on his. Well, you probably lean toward his side a little bit more than mine, but yeah, I don't fault you for that. I'm grateful that you made it happen. I was clarifying something that Michelle said, that you did not know that I was bringing Aubrey on, and that is a bold-faced lie. I have the messages up on the screen. I could share them again if you like. You know that I told you I was bringing on somebody. I wouldn't tell you who his name was because I didn't want Andrew to prepare for him. So just want to clarify that. I didn't sneak anybody in.
I got a question for a follow-up debate. Honestly, this is, I declare this, if you want to say, okay, the question that Glenn, just to respond to that question, if it wasn't condemn or if it wasn't sin, would it save the West? I would say no. However, do you have any idea what will save the West? Absolutely nothing.
Right. That's the one thing I pointed out is he didn't offer any solution. So it's just continue the way we've been.
Nothing.
Just keep
they want to go back in time. You can't do it.
We've already done prescriptive monogamy. We've done it. It doesn't. The fruit is what you see. So okay, you can shoot holes in something. And what I'm saying is a good solution. Although we've never tried it, so you actually do not know. But yeah, no, they offered no solution of their own.
I just want to mention there is some prescription monogamy in society, although prescription monogamy leans itself more towards arranged marriages. What we have currently happening across the West is serial monogamy. And serial monogamy is, and Pearl pointed out correctly, serial monogamy is soft polygyny.
Yes. Let's talk about what Glenn brought up here. She said, let's just share this real quick. This is a good point to discuss. Switch it back to this. Glenn, do you want to call in? By the way, you can join us if you like. I'll send you the.
I just want to mention that Glenn just say that the problem with our argument is because our position was that polygamy can save the West. I just want to correction there. That's not my position. I made that clear in my opening statement. I do believe absolute patriarchy can do that, but I mean that's something to be argued in the future or perhaps anywhere else. I do not share that point of view. By the way,
I want to say that's what caused the debate to go towards Andrew, because I would honestly say I feel like Rob, your talking point was how polygyny could save the West by simply meaning that the men that were supposed to be responsible for taking care of the women that they lay with, right, have a heart out for Jesus Christ.
The other thing,
literally bring a heart to Jesus Christ.
Yeah. The other thing that it did is it disallowed the contextual parallels to be drawn to biblical history. We couldn't draw any conclusions from King Joash and King Josiah, who they were ordained. They were basically given multiple wives to save God's kingdom. Right, and so these are historical examples of polygyny used to overcome evil, right? And so the spirit of Astaroth, whatever you want to say, the matriarchy that took over society, right? And polygyny saved the kingdom, right? So that's a biblical historical context that was disallowed. It's based on the secular viewpoints that were forced through the debate and the debate topic.
And what Ryan just mentioned here is you cannot have a matriarchy and patriarchy at the same time. You simply cannot. It is either patriarchy or patriarchy alone. If you want to have a matriarchy, then so be it. Establish it. Try to see how the doctrine of force is going to apply, but you cannot have both at the same time.
And monogamy only creates. If it doesn't create matriarchy, it creates at least egalitarianism, like an equal, right? Because neither of you have the right. Versus, I don't think with polygyny you have guaranteed patriarchy, automatic. Like I tweeted once, I said you can have patriarchy without polygyny, but you can't have polygyny without patriarchy.
No,
it's automatic. Okay, so let's just tackle Glenn. I did send you the link to join us on Restream. If Glenn comes in, Vaughn, I'm going to let him come in your spot, but I'm not sure if he wants to join us. But I want to tackle this question until he pops in the waiting room, if he does. Here's the one thing I did not hear either of you address during the debate. Let's say for the sake of argument, let's say for the sake of argument that polygyny is legal and not sin.
I'm not done
That
with it.
still fails to address the 70% of women initiating divorces. That still doesn't address women monkey branching from one guy to the next and using marriage like a promotion and a job. This is a great point.
That actually does.
How does it stop that?
It would actually, yeah, obviously, when you don't, forbid the top percent of men, they're going for it early in life, and they're selling their oats. The women are selling their oats, and then the men are not being responsible. However, if you make those men have a heart out for Jesus, they then become righteous, and then those women can actually marry those men instead of trying to leave those men and settle down with the men that's actually on their level later. Yeah. And honestly, I don't think women should even be on that comparative sense. It kind of, correlates to egalitarianism if you look at it in that way too. This idea that a woman has to be the same level as a man, it kind of can equate to that, and it's just not how it's supposed to be. Like, that's just not the order of things.
But that's my
response.
It's also, systemically through matriarchy that this problem exists, because all the power is given to women. And I think the statistics actually 85%, Glenn. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's a lot higher than 70. And what happens is, in the matriarchal system that we have, the women are granted the power through no fault divorce, right? You take no fault divorce. Now, this is something Pearl brought up as well in her response video. You take no fault divorce off the table, and choosing becomes a lot more important, right? And not only that, but you have men just stripped of all their power. This is exactly the job of matriarchy system does. It takes away all the power, it demasculates men, and then gives women all the power.
I'm going to bring Glenn in. Vaughn, I want to thank you for joining us, man.
Thank you, Vaughn.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure to be here, man. I look forward to more of y'all's work.
I'll email you about our coaching program, Vaughn. I think you did.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely check it out, man. And God bless to everyone.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
There he is.
Hey, what's going on, you guys?
Good evening, Glenn.
Good evening. How are you guys doing?
Very well, yourself.
I'm doing well. I'm about to go to the gym. Then I got word of this stream, and I was like, okay, let me chime in a little bit here. So let me go back to my question. Because Vaughn just tried to answer it. That doesn't solve the problem. Like it doesn't solve the problem. This problem is a heart issue. It's a selfishness issue. The reason why we have divorce is because we have too many selfish people thinking about me instead of we, the team. So regardless of you have a husband with 2 wives or a husband with 10 wives, if all 10 wives and the husband are all individually selfish, right? You're going to still have divorce. If you don't address the family law by any means, you just open yourself up to getting divorced by 2 women who could take half of what you make. And also with no fault divorce, it ain't got to have a reason to divorce your ass. So it's like, when it comes down to it, the argument for the debate was, can polygyny save the marriage in the West, right?
Mm.
That was the prompt. So if that's the prompt and there's no presentation of how polygyny can tackle the problems that are going on in the West when it comes to marriage and divorce, then it doesn't solve it. Your solution was, well, it'll allow men to have more options or to get more women, more children could be bred. That's great, but it doesn't mean it saves marriage. All it does is it's an incentive to marriage, but it doesn't save marriage. Mm. So that right there would be the crux of your guys' argument that I feel like you guys did not present the case in whatsoever.
Let me throw an idea out. So a woman typically pair bonds with the guy she loses her virginity to, or maybe the second guy she has sex with. It's one of, okay, now who is she sleeping with? Somebody that
like me.
What's that?
Someone like me.
Right. No, but she's sleeping with somebody that she likes, and she pair bonds to that person. If that guy is willing to marry her, I don't think she's going to monkey branch from him. What I think happens is the guys that are deflowering women, the chads that are having all the sex, they're not marrying.
Are you legislating this? Are you going to legislate morality? Because you can't legislate morality.
I know in my own life,
monogamy was legislated.
But that's not morality, though.
Oh, it was based upon moral values. We see this in the
That's
arguments in
based
the
upon, it would be
70s.
more based upon ethical values.
Yeah, but it was
Not moral.
well, I mean, we even had it in the William Blackmore case now recently in Canada in
Yeah.
2013. We've seen this as well. And at the end of the day, the only reason that the judge ruled in the William Blackmore case was that he said that that polygyny violates the sanctity and morality of monogamy. You can read the case; it's available online. So you're correct. So in your statement, that's not really true, because this has been the standing part in law
Okay,
in
so
Western life for about 200-300 years.
Sure, we could. I can concede that, but it still, it doesn't present the fact that you cannot legislate morality, because even then,
No.
that proves the point that
Yes.
even monogamy doesn't produce good people. People still cheat. People still divorce each other. People still do conniving shit.
That's
right? So,
And
even if you add polygamy to it, it doesn't solve anything. Now, I know, Aubrey, that's not your position. You said that your position in just a minute ago was the fact that you were saying patriarchy, well, or in the total patriarchy, or
absolute patriarchy.
absolute patriarchy.
That's correct.
I would agree that would be the only solution to that. But that means you would have to be willing to take away rights, women's rights, right? You're gonna have to them back into if they're single, until they get married, they should be under their father's leadership, under their father's rule, right? And they can't go move out on their own. Like, you would have to literally turn back a lot of laws and take away freedoms, which men won't do. Let's just be honest. Men won't do it. Men don't even fight for themselves in court for half the damn time. Right?
Now,
The reason why we haven't seen any divorce reform in the United States is because men don't care enough to fight for their own shit.
And Glenn, Glenn, and this is the issue, and we see a theoretical approach here, and we see a practical approach. And the theoretical approach, which you just mentioned, is that you have to take away a lot of civil rights that people have become really accustomed to in the last 100 years. Just for the record, that the suffragettes, this was also argued that 99% of women didn't want to have the right to vote more than 120 years ago. I mean, this is hashtag, this is all history. But yes, theoretically, remove it. But this is where my point is, and as I said, in a practical sense is, remember, monogamy-only societies do not give women the freedom of choice to the extent that they can choose exactly who they wish to couple with. And once again, I'm coming back to the law of averages. If you have on one side of the law of averages women that actually don't want to be social at all, you have on the other side of the law of averages women that want to be social. You have women on this side that maybe want to be in a monogamous relationship or maybe just be celibate, but you also have the option of women to be here on more group setups. And we see the whole development in polyamory. And so that's why
don't you think that polygyny is going to only be able to be achieved by high value guys that are top earners, right?
I don't know about money, but I think
well, I mean, I'm talking about they have to be able to provide the lifestyle.
Okay.
What about
one? We already know that a man that makes about on average $50,000 a year cannot provide the life for him and his wife today here in America. Only 18% of all couples, married or unmarried, are able to live off of one income. So hold on, let me on my point here. So we would know that if there was polygyny allowed, right, it would only be to the top earners that could able to afford to facilitate that. If you're going to go by the husband being the patriarch and being able to be the protector, the provider, the priest, and the leader of his home, he has to be able to provide. If he cannot provide on his own and he has to require them to provide, then now he's putting them out in the workforce and also exposing them to other men, right? You're putting them out in the same market where they could cheat on you on. But you see, so that doesn't even solve the case.
Yep, but you see, this is where a lot of people, and this once again, where a lot of people in this debate make a mistake to think that women are the same all across the board. Women are walking paradoxes. They're
I don't assume women are the same at all.
Okay, but listen to what I'm. Well, then you just argue in my favor, because let me say you said
no.
Some
I
women.
Didn't. I just said like the percentage is still available. The possibility of them cheating as much as they are cheating now is still the same. because they're out in the workforce.
Well, I'm going to prove that, because at the end of the day, what you're going to have is you're going to have women that are driven either by social class, they're going to driven by monetary value or wealth, and you get women that actually have a sincere approach to saying, listen, I want a man that has good genes, and I want to make sure that I have quality children. You have those women in society. So what we have is we have a whole spectrum of women that go about it. One thing I agree with you, that the men, the most high valued men will definitely draw more of these women, but you will see over time, you'll see, and this is what I spoke of, when it gets accepted, you'll see a definite spike in polygynous relationships immediately. But then as you see, and this is with all human cultural changes, societies, you see that spike, and you will start seeing a gradual decline as it starts normalizing, because in time people are going to realize, and we see this with homosexual relationships when it was legalized in 2005. You'll see this immediately. There was a complete spike in homosexual relationship and marriages, and suddenly over time it started dropping to a point where it was actually the same amount that would practice it.
Because they realized that marriages, they could be miserable, like
exactly. But what it does open up is, when you look at polygyny, is it does open up women the opportunity to actually to marry men that have have established culture commensurate to what they may be used to, or what they seek to be involved with.
I think it's dangerous, and here's the danger of it. It opens up men of means, men of resources that spend their hard life earning and to acquire to the status that they are, till they have those resources, that have a surplus amount of resources, and they get married to women who are only there for the resources.
We call them gold diggers in monogamy sense.
But see, like, again, so the guys already have to deal with one gold digger. Now imagine if you're able to marry like 10 girls, right? Now you got 8 gold diggers coming after your ass. Like, it just, like, I think it doesn't, ultimately it comes down to a heart problem. At the end of the day,
I agree.
Whether it's polygyny, whether it's monogamy, it's a heart problem. So unless you're able to change the heart of the culture, to change the way that they view marriage and the way that they value marriage, right, you're not going to save the West.
And you're right.
So polygyny, whether it's all patriarchy or whether it's all, what we have now, egalitarianism, right? It doesn't matter what authority structure is in place. It comes down to a heart matter. You cannot legislate morality. We cannot, like, it was a sin back then to have an affair, right? They would kill you. People would still risk their lives to go hop on some dick that wasn't theirs, right? Like, it doesn't matter, regardless of what structure or what marital structure is allowed legally. People, unless you address the heart of the problem, which is people's selfishness and people's sinful nature, then we're not gonna we can't fix it. It's not, you're not gonna legislate it, and polygyny is not gonna solve the problem.
Okay, Ron.
I would argue that morality has already been legislated, and that's the standard that we're trying to argue here. Is we're going off of the biblical standards that have already been established, true and tested for all of time. And I would also ask you, what changes the heart? I mean, because if we truly follow these principles that have been handed down to us from the Father above, does that not change the heart?
I want to mention this, and I want to segue before you answer that, Glenn. It gives you some time to formulate your answer. But what I want to say is, and this is the story that is, since the fall of man, this has been the story of humankind. It is I agree 100%. It's an attitude, it's a heart, it's a lack of commitment to proper authority. We see also that within Torah, how this is legislated, how this is presented, and how people are expected to adhere and follow these laws. I mean, Leviticus 18 is very clear what sexual immorality and what type of sexual acts are not acceptable. And so, but you know what? People are a bunch of assholes and bastards. They are still going to do these things. They are. We've seen this. How many times did Israel actually backslid? How many times did they practice idolatry? It is a story twice told. And so when we speak about this, when we speak about laws, now you cannot have, you need to have that expectation of having to follow the moral good. What is morally acceptable and what is morally reprehensible? We still need that. we still need to drive to see what is acceptable behavior. And so once again, when we go about this, we say, listen here, we see that people will screw up celibacy if they're given the opportunity to do it. I mean, this is once again, we see this, but we see that monogamy, we see all of these, we see celibacy, monogamy, and polygyny very clearly regulated in a biblical context. We see how the churches have moved away. In fact, I would say if there is something going on here, I would say that monogamy is so under fire at this present moment that we don't even see that monogamy is being honored. What I'm just saying is, let's just give people the option. I know it's going to be messy in the beginning, but I also know that there will people that men will come forward, give proper definition to these relationships to see how they can be achieved. And I'm telling you now, women are not stupid. They're going to see men that are successful, and they're going to say, that's the type of man I want to be.
Women already see men successful. Women already see the guys that they want to get with. I mean, we're not even like, when we're talking about this, we're not even adding the factor of modernity. What we have now today, we're always kind of looking back at it as like back then, right? Well, today, women don't need men. Women want men. Okay, like she doesn't need a husband. She could earn her own money. She make a lot more than you. All she has to do is show her butthole, right? She doesn't need you to protect her because they have the legal system. You know, the law is their daddy now. The government's their daddy, so they don't need you, right? So they want you. So when they have the opportunity to choose instead of need, they're gonna pick the guy that's at the top, the best option that she could practically get. So they're always already looking forward to the top tier guy that they could attain. So that doesn't change anything.
No,
right?
It doesn't.
It doesn't change the fact that there, even if we did. Again, they said, I'm not even arguing whether it's a sin or not. All right. I'm just arguing for the prompt here. When you look at the prompt, can it save the West? No. The answer is absolutely not. Nothing could save the West other than a heart change. Not even monogamy. Even if you legislated the fact that polygyny is legal, it still doesn't solve the problem. It still doesn't address the family court. It still doesn't address the promiscuity. It still doesn't address so many different elements here that's already going on currently in our society, that if that's, to me, that's where the argument and the debate failed, because Andrew didn't have to debate whether or not monogamy saves the West or monogamy could do this. You had the argument was, can polygyny save the West? That was the prompt.
Save marriage.
Or save marriage in the West. Save marriage in the West. So that was the prompt, and that was the whole crux of the argument. How are you going to now, Aubrey? You had a better opportunity when it comes to patriarchy, and if you would have presented more of a systematical patriarchal structure of what we would do, it would repeal the 19th. It would do this. It would do this. It would send these laws back to here, and then so you have a structure that maybe would make men more open to marriage, right? But like I would have said, go back to the 1940s or 36 laws when the husband was automatically awarded custody of children in a divorce. It was not the question. It was just automatically given to the husband. They're his responsibility. Those are his children. They're his responsibility. He has to have them.
I agree.
But nothing like that was presented. Because you got to figure, again, the problem in the West is a heart issue, and the reason why guys don't want to get married because they don't want to go through the divorce court. They don't want to risk having to lose everything. That's the problem in the West, is addressing that, not the as many options as one could attain for sexual partners. That we already got people sleeping around as it is, even in the church, that are not practicing, abstinence.
But it's important to say it's because we are a matriarchy.
We're not a matriarchy. There's never been a matriarchy that's been able to survive. Okay, it's always been a patriarchy. It just depends on what type of patriarchy it is.
That's correct.
Well, when you give women all the power in the court system, that makes it a matriarchy.
Who gives them all the power?
Yeah, who gives them? It's a doctrine of force.
Who gives them all the power?
Right, but the reason
then it's still a patriarchy.
The reason why it's given is so that it would destroy the family structure.
That's what feminism has wanted to do. And who has given them that? That's been men. Men has voted on these things, legislated these things, right? Guys will sell their soul for pussy. All right. We already know that. They will legislate laws for pussy. Okay, I guarantee you, the guy that voted to give women the right to vote on the 19th, he got tons of pussy after that. I guarantee that was his goal. All right, but at the end of the day, it's still a patriarchy. We are still a patriarchy. Just depends on what kind of patriarchy. Right? I would say we're a very effeminate patriarchy. All right, we're kind of like an androgynous patriarchy, but we still are a patriarchy.
On paper, I guess I can agree on paper, but in the house, when you have an egalitarianistic viewpoint in the house, the women have the power over their husband to take everything he has. So who really is making that vote? It might be the man making the vote, but it's wife that told him so. That makes it a matriarchy. That's my position. But
But I mean, what Glenn is saying here is, you're right. You're right. I think in individual households, you have matriarchy households. But what Glenn is arguing here is our society. He never attended to a single individual household.
Yeah, but all those men are married.
But listen here. Let's do it. Once again, it comes down to doctrine of force. If all the women decide tomorrow, listen here, we're going to legislate men out of power. Good luck. How are they going to achieve that? They don't have the force or the power to do so. The same with men. If men tomorrow decide, woman, we're voting you out of everything society, women are going to complain for 2-3 days and going to go back to the kitchen. And now this is very crass to say that, but that's just what's the reality of it. That's the doctrine of force, and that's how it applies within society. I know you wanted to mention something, Rob.
Well, can I answer this real quick?
Of course.
He's like, most people who broken families and divorce are not Christians. Then why do Christians have the highest divorce out of all religious groups? And are you determining whether they're a Christian or not? I didn't know your name is God. All
right, that's a tough one. The only thing I was going to mention about saving the Western, I definitely agree with the court laws are stacked in women's favor. And that's a real issue. But the heart matter, like if you got the fathers back in the home, so you got a good godly man. First off, if he's not a godly man, why would he even want to marry more than one? Because
I don't think if you're secular, you shouldn't get married at all. It's a sacrament. It's a holy sacrament. If you're not a Christian, why get married?
Why get married? There's no reason to.
Just go plow.
Yeah, go plow away. Now, if you got the godly man marrying 3-4 women and he has a rack of kids and he raises those kids in a godly home, teaches them good values. He never sees his dad cheat on his mom. His dad never watches porn. He's a good dude. Has got a tight family structure. You can't tell me that's not going to change the heart of a society over time.
We don't know. We don't know, because actually when we've actually seen polygyny in practice, we still see the heart still being a problem.
I don't. Right? I agree. We don't.
There's a way to find out.
I mean, look at King David. Look at King David. God gave him all of Saul's wives. He's like, dude, I gave you all of his wives, and that still wasn't enough for you. So it doesn't say that like a good godly man. David was a man after God's own heart. God said it himself.
Yeah.
So that doesn't fix the problem. That's what I'm saying. That the solution is. Theoretically, you may want to be able to make it sound good, but we know by fact, by the Bible itself, that it doesn't solve the problem.
And I want to mention here is that the men, this is a responsibility. I mean, there's in sexuology, and it's a standard saying that says men are the gateways to relationships and women are the gateways to sex. I mean, this is well established. But what I want to say here is that when you see is that for, I believe, from the about 1200s till about 1600s, the church, especially in England, did a massive drive to get men educated. That's where we get the word husband and wife from, because they put a lot of effort to establish the standard of relationship and marriage throughout the British Islands. And I think this can be can be achieved by proper education. We just have so few information written about this subject. It's either based upon Mormonism or it is based upon Muslim polygyny, but we have so little about biblical polygyny. It's a known fact, and I'm not going to even argue that because I'm going to lose that debate. But the fact of the matter is that I do believe that we're going into a period of time where we are going to see this happening more so. I mean, for goodness sake,
I think we're going to see Isaiah 3 in full effect.
That's
Isaiah 3 talks about this, very clearly. It talks about that, in Isaiah 4:1 said, at that time there'll be 7 women coming to one man, asking them to take them by his name, and they will feed, or they will clothe and feed themselves,
and they'll take away their reproach,
as long as they take away their shame,
and
right?
be called by his name.
But also, what was the problem? What led to that? It was the nation, backsliding from God, right? God's hand was off the nation, right? Also female led, it says your women rule over you.
Yep.
And in Isaiah 3 it says like your leaders or your rulers are like children, and female rule over you, right?
Yes.
So we see this. What we see this is feminism taking over. We see this usurp of male authority, right? And we see this very egalitarian or androgynous society being in place. And we see what happens with that. We see that's the consequences of this, right?
Absolutely.
But also at that time, are there good men? Are there valuable men? What happens to them? Well, the righteous are good, but the strong men, the leaders, right? They die. The captains, the soldiers, they die by the sword. There is the rulers are dead, right?
That's right.
Those in power are actually the ones are being held accountable for this type of behavior. And God says that, why have you done this to my people? Why do you put their head on the, or put their face on the stone or something like that? The leaders get consequences. The good men, the fighting men, are killed off, right? So all you have is a bunch of weak beta men hiding like little Mitches, right? And these women are stuck with a bunch of Mitches. That doesn't sound like the kind of quality of men that I would want to leave women with. So,
absolutely.
So he would say that even in this sense, that polygyny, just for the sake of argument, it becomes the outcome due to failure to be obedient. In that sense, it's part of the consequence. In retrospect, right? In this sense, in Isaiah 3-4, it's actually part of the consequence of the outcome of their failure to be obedient and not worship false idols, right?
It's also the beginning of the remnant as well.
Yeah, and once again, and it's exactly right what Ryan says. I'd like to like what you say. I believe polygyny, but not just polygyny, because I believe there are righteous celibate men, righteous monogamous men. I just think it's just another lifeboat being cast out to save as many people as possible. But what you hinted at earlier, Glenn, is that we see a completely collapse. And I mean, if you look at Universe 25 experiment, and I mean everybody knows it. It's, if you're online, go Google it. Universe 25 experiment. Have you heard of this experiment, Glenn?
I haven't heard of it. Could you
So what was it, Professor John Calhoun in 1972, what he did is he took 25 he replicated this experiment 25 times. What he did is he gave a colony of mice. He developed a perfect colony for mice, and he gave them everything. They had nothing they had enough food, comfort, everything. And over a certain generations, over almost 3 generations, you started seeing the males becoming effeminate. They started not even being interested in copulation. That's exactly comfort, isn't it? And so
feminism is a first world problem.
Well, absolutely, it's comfort. It's a result of comfort. So what you have is you'll have this whole development. And so what they call these mice developing, they called them the beautiful ones, because they were so more concerned with grooming themselves. I get you not, they have it recorded. They were so concerned with grooming themselves that they were at all concerned with copulation, breeding, even socializing. And eventually he replicated this 25 times, and each one of those times, 25 times.
Hold on, real quick.
Collapsed.
Rob, could you go back to that last comment? I didn't mean to cut you off, Aubrey. Please continue. But I just want, when you're done, I want to respond to this.
Sure. Go ahead, Aubrey.
Go ahead, Aubrey. Continue.
Okay.
I mean,
no problem. And so at the end of the day, all 25 times he replicated, and it all failed. Each one of those colonies completely came to an end. You can watch it. It's Universe 25 experiment from 1972, and a great example of what we're facing at this moment.
We'll check that out. Universe 25, you said?
Experiment. That's correct.
Let me write this down. Actually, I'm pretty sure my assistant is watching this right now, so I'm pretty sure they have written it down for me. So polygyny allows women to not have to settle, but to marry the top guy who they want to submit to. What the fuck is going on now? Did you think that they're settling? You dumbass. These women are marrying the fucking guy that they want to because they're not forced to marry. They don't have to marry anybody. They have the option of selection. This is not an arranged marriage.
I don't think they're marrying the guy that they want to marry. I think the guy that they want to marry isn't proposing. Was Justin Waller proposing?
Justin Waller is not a Christian.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about Christians.
Well, I'm just saying, period. Like, you if you're going to use Justin Waller as an example, well, Justin Waller's not a Christian. So why would he? We already said, why would he get married?
So let's just say Justin Waller was a Christian. He marries one. Now he's off the market. So now they have.
And then did the woman marry the guy that she wanted to marry?
That one woman did.
Okay. So that doesn't solve the problem.
Sure,
you see what I'm saying? There's still a woman that got to marry the man that she wants to marry. And that here's the thing: it doesn't even account for. Let's say that polygyny is loud. Let's say the Christian Justin Waller did not want to marry that heifer. That bitch was heavy, okay? And he said, "Fuck no, I'm not gonna take an L. I have a top tier wife category. You don't meet that standard. That woman still doesn't get married."
I'm not sure I followed that.
No, it's true. No, it's true. And again, but this is again, it gives you options. It just once again it enlarges the options for some of these women. You know, once again, and I've been
women have already the option. Women have as many options as they want. But they don't even most of the time today, women don't even want to get married. They love this soft like polygyny lifestyle or polygamy lifestyle that they have. Why they got one guy that takes them on the luxury cruises, right? They got the other guy that gives them the good dick, and then they have the other guy that buys them the cars and the clothes and shit. They have it the other way around. Why would they want to give that up? Well, how are you gonna sell polygyny marriage to a woman who already has polygamy in society that's accepted?
Well, once again, when I talk about this, I'm talking about not polyamory. I'm not talking about just fooling around. I'm not talking about a Dubai 18-year-old bimbos going on cruise yachts. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about a proper relationship, proper structure. I'm talking about people that are sincere. I mean, first of all, before we look at the problem, we need to look at the perfect solution or the perfect example, or correction, the perfect example, before we even get into how to manage it, because that's how you determine law. You see a problem, you find the ideal, and then you work through that. That's how promulgation happens.
But see, I think at the end of the day, like when it comes down to, and I got a jet after this because I got to be at the gym. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is that, let's say it's a patriarchy. Let's say it's even a biblical patriarchy, which we have never seen a society operate under a biblical patriarchy because there haven't been one, right? There's never been a biblical patriarchy.
There hasn't been one in a long time.
When? Because there wasn't one when Jesus was here.
No, we're talking about ancient Israel.
Post Jesus?
Oh, no,
King Joash, King Josiah.
They all collapsed. Don't get me wrong. They all collapsed. But they
weren't
biblical.
If they were biblical, don't you think that they would have been thriving and sustained?
They collapsed after the matriarchy took hold. You know that.
You mean after Jezebel?
They collapsed,
and the kings after the kings, fell to the pussy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
Okay. So
yes,
here again, we have never seen one sustainable. All right. So even let's say you can't legislate anything.
How long do you sustain? What is the time frame for sustain?
Till the end of time, that'll be sustaining.
Then no government is sustainable.
That's what I'm looking at.
Like
Rome is fallen, everything is fallen, and it's all because men love pussy. Think about it. That's the end of society. Even the polygynous society that had allowed polygyny, they have all fallen because men love pussy.
True.
All right. You need to get guys to have better dick control. All right. And you need to have guys to have change the heart problem that they have. Even when the Pharisees came to Jesus, was like, "Yo, can we divorce our wives for any reason?" He's like, "No, motherfucker. You guys can only divorce them when for sexual immorality. All right. If you do that, anything other than that is adultery. Right.
You always have the simps.
you're always going to have people with corrupted hearts. So the reason at the end of the day, even if you are addressing the marriage in the West, and even if you're addressing to trying to add polygyny as an option, you have to acknowledge that it doesn't solve the problem, because the problem at the end of the day is individuals' hearts. And if they're not faced with the consequence, even though you cannot legislate morality, all legislation does is as a buffer. That doesn't mean people are still not going to wiggle around it, because we have seen that happen. So at the end of the day, the problem with what we have here is that we don't have people really appealing to God and wanting to desire to obey God, have that submission to under God's law and desiring God's heart, as like having the mind of Christ. They don't have no desire to pursue that. They have a desire to pursue their own fleshly desires, and they will rationalize it. They will justify it by any means necessary to whatever they need to say to make them sound good or feel good. And you know what men do when we hear that shit? We go, yeah, girl, I know. He was an asshole. Come over here. Let me pray with you. And then come on, sit on my lap. And then not just ride the dick. Like that's what we're doing. Instead of telling them, both men and women, holding both men and women accountable for their faults. All right. It's not about, who's responsible, but who's at fault here. Right. Not holding men or women accountable. That's where the church has failed. The church has failed, whether it allows polygyny or not. The church has failed by not holding both men and women accountable for their sins. The church needs to be held accountable first. If you want to change the hearts of people, the church's heart needs to change. You got to hold the church accountable to what they're doing and what they're not doing, and stop preaching this, egalitarian, androgynous, culture, this servant leadership, this ass backwards, slavery for husbands, and need to start preaching a more biblical patriarchy, which they took away back in 1984. When they established egalitarianism and complementarianism, because all complementarianism is a rent-a-cop. You have all the responsibility with no authority. That's exactly what complementarianism is. So go back to biblical patriarchy, reestablish that, hold the church accountable, hold men and women accountable to their station. That's how you fix things. That's how you fix marriage. And regardless of polygyny or monogamy, that's what needs to be done.
I agree with you. There's nothing I can change there. I just think the only thing I would add is it didn't start just in 1984. It was a slow descent through ultimately crystallizing in 1984. But then 100% I agree with you. No dispute. You have me on the same side.
But that's what we are calling men to do, though, by the way. That's why we're bringing back biblical patriarchy. This is the call to men, right? This is what we're after.
Yeah. And I'll just so you guys know, I'll be with Pearl at the end of this week. So
put a word in.
Glenn, if you want to get somebody famous for her to talk about, you can reach out to Dr. Rujane Killian, world famous doctor. Well,
how about Rob? You give me whoever's contact.
Sure.
If you could just shoot me their contact.
That woman is ridiculously smart.
I have no problem talking to them or bringing them on.
She's a first wife.
Oh wow!
Yes, cool. She's in a. It's my wife. She's
your wife. Oh
yeah.
You said doctor. I was like, why does that last name kind of sound familiar?
Yeah.
She's done some stuff with Jordan Peterson too.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, Aubrey, if you don't mind, give Rob your contact to me, and then we will make that shit happen.
Thanks, Glenn.
All right, gentlemen. You guys have a good rest of the night.
Great to have had you on.
Go to his YouTube channel and subscribe. He's one of the few men of God pastors. If you used to be a pastor, didn't you?
No more pastor. I'm the youth pastor. Let's get it right. We can't be going around fault.
Yeah. You call it straight. I haven't. That's why I invited you on the first time. It's like I haven't heard any men of God talk like this. So
yeah, I'm kind of raw. They don't like me very much. Sorry.
Thanks all right,
guys, I got a jet.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Blessed.
Everybody, do us a favor. If you think that polygyny is righteous, drop a 1 in the comments. If you think that it's sin or it would not fix the West, drop a 2. I'd just like to go back through and see what everybody thought. You can also leave your biggest takeaway. Anything. I appreciate all the comments that came in. We had a ton of comments. A lot of people watching from all over the country, even other countries. And we have a coaching program for those of y'all who may be interested in biblical marriage, learning more about it, whether you're a man or you're a woman. Maybe polygyny is your goal, and you're just like, well, how would I ever attain this? We want to help you. We not only want to teach people that what God's word says about marriage, that polygyny is righteous. We're going to teach you how to do it well. And these two guys that I have on here with me are coaches. I'm partnered with them, and the three of us are formed Maximum Potential Coaching Program, and we have group coaching calls, and we have modules that you go through and exercises to really help you level up. And then we also help, with game and, how to meet women and how to have conversations with them when this is your specific goal. Now, we do have guys in the program, and their goal is just to, find one woman, and, maybe there'll be more, maybe not. They're not sure about that yet. So that if you're not necessarily sold on polygyny, the program is still for you. I'm going to drop the link to the application. That's the first step. You complete that, and then Ryan and myself will jump on a call with you and see if you're a good fit for the program. You guys have anything else that you want to add?
I just want to mention I have been irresponsible for almost a year and two now, and Rob has really been pushing me to also start doing some social content. I have a lot going on, and I have bent the knee, and so look out for that. Rob's going to help me with it, and make sure you, if you see my name pop up, like and subscribe. And once again, these are my team members. I'm very loyal to them. I'll be working with them, and looking forward in just getting the message out there. It's not necessarily from my side polygyny, although I am there to assist in coaching people with that dynamic. But what I am there for is to raise up so that you can reach version 2.0 and you walk with thunder and lightning, because we surely need a storm to come.
Looks like the ones have it. I haven't got 1, 2. We haven't got a single 2 in all the comments. So, hey, this thing is growing. This movement is growing. Ryan, anything?
No, I thought it was a great time tonight. Thanks for having me on. And one thing I will add is, one of the focuses of our program is to help you become marriageable. That's our number one focus. Now, we do believe in celibacy as well. If that's what you are called to, that's what we'll coach you to do. We're going to teach you how to level up your goals to become the best version of yourself. The focus is becoming marriageable.
If anyone did not get that link, maybe it didn't pop up in the comments for you, go ahead and email me, rob@robbykowalski.com, and just put the word coach in the subject line, and I will send you that application link, and then we can schedule a call with you. But that's it. Hey, what do you guys think about doing the Pearl response? Maybe we should, because she made a video too, especially if she makes a second part. I think we should do the same thing for that video. What are your thoughts? Do it? Okay, maybe Wednesday night?
Sure.
We'll talk about it. All right. We'll let you guys know. Hopefully we'll do another one with Pearl. Keep us sharing the truth, guys. I've seen a lot more people now on social media talking about this. People are coming out of the bushes. They're not being afraid anymore. And this is how we're going to get the truth across the finish line is by being bold. So,
and remember, gentlemen, that comfort is the enemy of happiness.